My husband whispered, "Hide the kids," as I uncovered a secret altar covered in blood and strange symbols. It had started as a normal day, one that I could have never predicted would spiral into something so terrifying. The house was quiet, almost eerily so. The kids were playing in the backyard, the sun was shining, and my husband, Greg, was at work. Everything was, as far as I could tell. But there was always something a little unsettling about the old house we had moved into. I'd convinced myself it was just the age of the place, the creaks in the floorboards, the drafty windows. But deep down I knew there was more to it. Greg and I had found this house almost by accident, a little cottage tucked away on the outskirts town. We had fallen in love with it the minute we walked in, enchanted by the quiet, by the overgrown garden, by the secluded feel of it. Felt like the perfect place to raise our family. Lately, I had been feeling uneasy, a sense of something lurking just beyond my awareness. Little things at first, a strange smell that would appear out of nowhere, flickers of movement out of the corner of my eye, that constant feeling of being watched, especially when I was alone. I had brushed it off as stress, as the weight of settling into a new home, but today, as I was cleaning the attic, something changed. It wasn't just the usual dust and old boxes. There was something else. I had been going through some of the old furniture that had been left behind in the attic, pulling out boxes of knickknacks, an old dresser, some chairs that needed reupholstering. The attic was always musty and filled with the smell of old wood, but today it felt suffocating. Something about it was off. I couldn't place it, but I kept getting the distinct feeling that something was hidden there, something I wasn't supposed to find. The feeling made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I had come across an old rug tucked away in the corner of the attic, rolled up and shoved behind an old chest. At first I thought it was just junk, another piece of unwanted furniture. When I unrolled it, my breath caught in my throat. Beneath the rug was a trapdoor. The wood was worn, old, almost like it had been sealed for a long time. First I stood there, frozen. The trapdoor was out of place, as if it didn't belong. But curiosity got the better of me, and I crouched down to inspect it. There was a small latch at the side, rusted but functional. I pulled it open, and with a creak, the door swung inward. Below, I could see the faintest glimmer of light, a small, dimly lit room beneath the house. My heart pounded in my chest as I slowly descended the wooden steps, a mix of dread and curiosity filling me. The air was thick with dust and the walls were damp, but the thing that made my blood run cold wasn't the room itself. It was what was in it. The first thing I noticed was the faint smell of something metallic, something sharp, almost like iron. The room was small, cramped, with stone walls that seemed ancient, and the floor was covered in what looked like old wooden planks. But what really caught my attention was the altar. It was set against the far wall, carved into the stone like it had been there for centuries. The altar itself was wooden, but it was stained with dark, dried blood. And etched into the stone around it were strange symbols, symbols that I couldn't recognize, but something in me recoiled when I looked at them. They seemed alive, like they were meant to do something, to summon something. My eyes scanned the rest of the room, and I saw more of the symbols, painted on the walls, burned into the floorboards. There were jars on shelves, jars filled with strange objects I couldn't identify. Some of the jars contained what looked like bones. Others held liquids, dark and viscous. My stomach churned as I realized what I was looking at. This was no ordinary storage room. This was something else. I took a step back, my pulse racing. My mind was scrambling, trying to make sense of it all. What was this place? The thought that kept repeating in my head was, it can't be real. But the bloodstains on the altar, the strange symbols, they were real. They were there. And then I heard a voice, quiet and urgent. "Hide the kids." The words came from behind me, and I spun around so quickly that I almost lost my balance. Was Greg. His face was pale, his eyes wide with fear, and his body was tense like he had been running. I hadn't heard him come in. He was supposed to be at work. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice shaky as the unease in my chest turned into full-blown panic. His eyes were frantic, darting between me and the trapdoor. "You need to get the kids out of here," he said urgently, stepping forward. "Now." I stood there for a moment, stunned. The air felt heavy, suffocating, as if something was about to snap. "Greg, what's going on?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What is all of this?" Greg's expression twisted in pain, and for the first time, I saw something in him that I hadn't recognized before: guilt, fear, and something darker. His eyes dropped to the floor and he took a deep, shaky breath before answering. "I should have told you sooner," he said, his voice strained. "But I didn't want to scare you. I didn't want to drag you into this." "What is this, Greg?" I repeated, my fear turning into confusion, anger. "What the hell is going on?" He swallowed, his gaze still avoiding mine. "I didn't know how to tell you, but I've been keeping a secret. This house, it's not just old, it's cursed. And the things in this house, they've been watching us, waiting for the right time." My heart stopped in my chest. I took a step back, my eyes wide. "What do you mean they've been watching us?" I asked, my voice rising in disbelief. "Who? What are you talking about?" Greg took a deep breath, his voice trembling as he finally looked up at me. "I didn't know the full story when we moved in, but I found out there's something about this place. It's been passed down through generations, and every family that's lived here, they've all ended up the same way." "What do you mean, ended up the same way?" I asked, my voice sharp now, the panic starting to rise again. Greg's face was pale as he stepped closer to me, his hands trembling. They all disappeared, Emma. Families, every one of them. They were all drawn to that altar." He pointed toward the altar in the corner of the room. "They made deals, dark deals, and now it's our turn." I felt the world spin around me as his words sank in. This couldn't be real. Couldn't. But the evidence was all around me. The blood-stained altar, the strange symbols, the oppressive feeling in the air. "No," I said, shaking my head. "No, I don't believe you. This is some kind of joke, Greg. Prank. This can't be real." Greg's expression darkened, and his gaze turned hard. "I wish it was. But I've seen it, Emma. I've seen them. I've seen what happens when the altar is used." I looked back at the altar, my heart racing as I realized just how serious he was. "What happens?" I asked, barely able to breathe. He swallowed again, the fear in his eyes deepening. "They come. And once they're here, they've claimed you. There's no way out." I backed away from him, my mind racing, my chest tight with panic. I don't understand. "Greg, who are they? What do you mean, claimed?" I was practically gasping for air now, the weight of his words suffocating me. "I should have told you before, but I didn't know how," Greg said, his voice barely a whisper. "Well, but it's not too late. We can leave. We can still run, Emma. We need to take the kids and go now. They've found us. They've been waiting, and now they're going to come for us all." My heart pounded in my chest. Felt dizzy. The room felt like it was closing in on me. "Greg, what do we do? What do you mean they're going to come for us?" The air in the room grew colder. The strange symbols on the walls seemed to glow faintly, and the floorboards creaked beneath us as if something or someone was moving in the shadows. Before I could ask anything more, the sound came again, soft at first like whispers in the distance, but it grew louder, more distinct, until it was impossible to ignore. It was a sound I couldn't place, like murmuring voices, echoing from the walls around us. And that's when I heard it. A knock at the door. The knocking was slow at first, deliberate, like someone was waiting for us to answer. But as the seconds passed, the knocking grew faster, louder, more insistent. Greg's face went pale and he grabbed my arm. "It's time," he whispered. The air in the room thickened, and I could feel the walls closing in around me. Whatever had been waiting for us, it was finally here. And it wasn't going to let us leave. The knocking grew louder, more urgent, like someone or something was pounding relentlessly at the door, determined to make itself heard. Each knock reverberated in my chest, shaking me to the core, and I couldn't help but flinch with every new blow to the door. Felt trapped, cornered, like there was nowhere to hide, no escape. Greg's grip on my arm tightened, his fingers digging into my skin, and I turned to him, panic rising in my chest. His face was ashen, the color drained from his features as he stared at the door, his eyes wide with a fear I had never seen in him before. The man who had always been my protector, my steady anchor, was now shaking, paralyzed by the same terror I was feeling. "What do we do, Greg?" I asked, my voice frantic, my mind spiraling into chaos. "What is that? Who's out there? What's coming for us?" Greg didn't answer right away. His eyes flickered between the door and the dark corners of the room, like he was trying to figure out what to do, how to protect us. But there was nothing in his eyes but fear, a fear that told me everything I needed to know. Whatever was on the other side of that door, it wasn't something we could face. The knocking stopped suddenly, and a cold silence filled the room. My heart pounded in my chest as I strained to hear anything at all. My breath was shallow, my palms sweaty as I wiped them on my jeans. I glanced over at Lily, who had appeared in the doorway, her face pale and wide-eyed. She looked terrified, confused, and I hated seeing her like that. "Mom," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What's going on? What's happening?" I opened my mouth to reassure her, but before I could speak, the room was filled with a sound that made my blood run cold. It wasn't the knocking this time. It was scraping, the unmistakable sound of something dragging across the floor, moving slowly but steadily, like something was coming closer. I turned toward the source of the sound, my heart in my throat. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, they were shifting, vibrating with the noise, as though the very structure of the house was alive, responding to whatever was coming for us. I looked at Greg, my eyes pleading with him for some kind of explanation, some kind of answer. He was staring straight ahead, his face pale and drawn. His lips parted, but the words that came out were barely a whisper. "It's too late," he said, his voice shaking. "They've already marked us." The weight of his words hit me like a ton of bricks. "What do you mean, they've marked us?" demanded, my voice cracking with fear. "What's happening? Greg, tell me. What is this? What is happening to us?" But before he could answer, a low growl, deep, guttural, rose from the floorboards. It wasn't the wind, it wasn't a creak of the house settling. It was something else. Something living. My heart stopped, and for a split second I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. It was like the entire house was holding its breath, and then the door flew open. The force of it was so sudden, so violent, that I stumbled back, my breath caught in my throat. The door slammed against the wall with a deafening crash, and standing there in the doorway was something that could only be described as a nightmare. It wasn't human. It was wrong. The creature in front of us was impossibly tall, its skin stretched tight over its bones, pale and translucent in the dim light. Its face was elongated, its features sharp and distorted, and its eyes, those eyes, glowed with an unnatural light. The pupils were dark slits, the irises glowing an eerie yellow, and they locked onto me, as if it had been waiting for me, for this exact moment. Its hands were long and gnarled, each finger ending in claws that scraped against the floor as it moved. I could see the shadows swirling around its form, almost like it was part of the darkness itself, pulling the light from the room, leaving nothing but an overwhelming sense of dread in its wake. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body wouldn't move. My legs were rooted to the floor, my heart beating so loudly that it drowned out everything else. I couldn't take my eyes off the creature. It was like I was drawn to it, as if my very soul recognized it, knew it, even though I had never seen anything like it in my life. Lily stood frozen in place beside me, her hand clutching mine, her eyes wide with terror. Could feel her trembling beside me, and it took everything in me to stay calm enough to hold her hand, to not collapse into the fear threatening to overtake me. Greg didn't move. He didn't even seem to breathe. He was standing in front of me, blocking us from the creature, but I could see the way his body was shaking, the way his shoulders were hunched in resignation. "Greg," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "What is that? What's happening?" He didn't answer at first. His eyes were still fixed on the creature in the doorway, his face pale, his expression stricken. Finally he spoke, but his voice was low, strained, like he was trying to hold himself together. "It's what I've been afraid of," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "It's them. The ones I told you about. The ones who made the deal. The ones who mark the families that move into this house." "The deal," I repeated, my mind racing. "What deal, Greg? What are you talking about?" The creature in the doorway took a slow step forward, and I felt a rush of cold air sweep through the room. The walls seemed to darken around it, as if the house itself was growing darker, responding to its presence. Greg's voice broke through the heavy silence again. "The house," he said, his voice cracking. It's cursed. This house was built on something ancient, something dark. When people move in, they unknowingly make a deal. They offer something, and in return, they're allowed to stay. But there's a price." "A price?" asked, my voice rising. "What price, Greg? What are you talking about?" The creature took another step, its yellow eyes burning into me, its claws scraping the floor with an awful screech that made my skin crawl. It was getting closer. Greg stepped forward, his face filled with something like guilt. "The price is your soul," he whispered. "And now it's time to pay." The room seemed to close in around me. My breath came in short, panicked bursts. "No," I whispered. "No, Greg, you're lying. This is insane." He shook his head, his eyes filled with sorrow. "I tried to keep it from you. I tried to protect you. But it's too late now. It's come for us. And there's no way out." The creature was now standing directly in front of us. Its mouth opened, and I saw rows of jagged teeth, sharp and deadly. Its breath was foul, like decay, like something long dead, and I could feel the stench crawling into my lungs, making me gag. I turned to Greg, my heart in my throat. "What do we do? How do we stop it?" gasped. But Greg didn't answer. He simply turned, facing the creature, his shoulders sagging in resignation. "We can't stop it," he said quietly. "It's already too late." The creature's eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment I could see the darkness in them, the emptiness, like it was staring into the very depths of my soul. And then, in that instant, I knew there was no escaping. No matter what we did, no matter how hard we tried to fight, the darkness had already won. And as the creature reached out, its long claws reaching for us, I realized there was only one thing left to do: survive.